It is March, which means it is the beginning of Milky Way core season. And that word core is really important, and I'm going to talk about that more in today's video. But I'm sure many of you are buzzing to photograph the heart of the Milky Way galaxy. So I thought I'd share a video with 7 tips for better Milky Way photographs. I'm going to start with a cold, hard truth. Seek darker skies. If you really want better Milky Way photographs, you need to find the darkest skies you can possibly find. No light pollution filter is going to help you. There's no post-processing trickery that's going to unveil the Milky Way from behind the luminous fog of light pollution. The best thing you can do is use the resources on International Dark Sky Association to start a campaign against light pollution in your local area. Contact your local MP and help to educate others about the issue of light pollution. But for now, you need to get as far away from light pollution as you possibly can, so check a website like lightpollutionmap.info and find the darkest skies near to you. But also consider the direction you're going to be facing. So for example, in the UK, and most of the Northern Hemisphere for that matter, the Milky Way core arches pretty low across the southern horizon. So when I'm looking for a location, I want to make sure that there's no towns or cities to the south of my location. And this is why south-facing coasts are really good, because you're looking out to sea and there's no big towns or big cities, and you normally get pretty dark skies. Now, once you've found some dark skies, it's important to do some daytime scouting, because if you're looking for an interesting photograph to take, you're not going to be able to find it in the dark. So go to your location in the daytime, try and find an interesting subject or a way that you can capture something unique about the landscape that you're in. I like to take test shots with my smartphone, and I'll add any interesting compositions or points to Google My Maps, and I'll add some notes about the direction the composition is facing, perhaps what I'd like to feature in the night sky with that composition as well. But daytime scouting is super important for your safety as well, because you never know what dangers are waiting for you in the dark. There might be a big hole in the ground or some dangerous terrain or a big cliff edge. So it's really important to go and check out the landscape in the daytime before you go out in the dark. Tip number 3 is to use a fast lens, so a lens with a really wide aperture. So normally for Milky Way, I recommend at least f2.8. If you can get a lens that opens up to f1.8 or f1.4, that's going to be even better, because more light is going to be allowed to pass through the bigger opening inside the lens. The more light you collect, the less noise there's going to be in the image, the brighter the Milky Way is going to be, and the more detail it's going to have. Now, lenses that open up to f1.4 or f1.8 are going to be prime lenses, so fixed focal length lenses. You can't zoom with these lenses, they're just one focal length. So make sure you pick the focal length wisely. Now, me personally, I love the 24mm focal length. I like doing panoramas with the 24mm lens. But if you're a beginner, or I don't know, some of you out there will just prefer the wider field of view of a 20mm lens or a 14mm lens instead. Tip number 4, it's not all about the core, and I promise you, I didn't plan for that to rhyme. It's just the way it worked out. But if you look for Milky Way photography tips online, you'll come across a term, Milky Way season. And most of them say that it spans from March to September. And that kind of makes a lot of beginners believe that you can only photograph the Milky Way between March and September, which is not true. You can see some part of the Milky Way all year round. So when you see this Milky Way season, they're only referring to the core of the Milky Way, which is the very central bulge of the spiral galaxy which we call home. But the core is a very small part of the Milky Way band that we can see in the night sky. There are many other regions of the Milky Way that are just as interesting to photograph and certainly deserve a lot more attention than they get. There's the bright fuzzy Cygnus region, which I absolutely love. There's a beautiful jewel encrusted region of the Milky Way that spans from the Crux constellation to the Carina constellation. And there's a really nice faint section of the Milky Way that runs through the winter circle asterism of bright stars in the winter sky. I made an entire video about all of the other sections of the Milky Way other than the galactic core, and where to find them and when is the best time to photograph them. So be sure to check out that video after this video. And if you're enjoying the free educational astrophotography content, make sure to hit subscribe down below and hit a like to let me know that you're enjoying this video. But speaking of educational content, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives who want to follow their curiosity and learn new skills. There's even a number of astrophotography classes available too, so sticking with the theme of Milky Way photography, you should really check out Ian Norman's class on Nightscape's landscape astrophotography. It covers the gear you need, exposing for the Milky Way, and processing your images as well. I recently completed Marquez Brownlee's YouTube success class and picked up so many tips that I'm applying to my own YouTube channel to hopefully improve the quality of these videos. If you'd like to give Skillshare a try, they're giving away a 1-month free trial to the first 1,000 people that click the link in the video description down below. You get full premium access to all of the courses. You can try as many as you like in that month. So what are you waiting for? Hit that link in the video description down below. Tip number 5 is to use a star tracker. Now, if you're not using a star tracker, your exposure times are going to be limited by the star trailing limit. So because Earth is rotating, if you expose for too long, the stars appear to move and they will trail in your images. But we want the stars to look nice and round and pinpoint like we see with the naked eye. So with a 14mm lens on a full frame camera, you'll be limited to like 25 seconds. Or if you're using a high megapixel camera, you may see star trailing at 20 seconds or maybe even 15 seconds even. So using a star tracker will allow you to take exposures of the night sky of multiple minutes, and that allows you to lower your ISO and you're collecting more light in each exposure. So as you collect more light, you have less noise visible in your images, and it means you're going to have a lot more detail. The Milky Way is going to be a lot brighter and the image quality is just incredible. The other amazing benefit to a star tracker is that it allows you to use longer focal length lenses with things like the Milky Way. So for example, a 50mm lens on a full frame camera, you'd normally be limited to like 10 seconds before you can see the stars trailing. But with a star tracker, you can do 1 minute or maybe 2 minute, maybe even 3-minute exposures with a 50mm lens. You just get insane detail in the Milky Way. And especially if you create a panorama of these tracked images, you really get just amazing detail in the Milky Way. And of course, the longer focal length of a lens you use, the better detail you're going to have in your images. You should go and check out my other video where I photographed the Milky Way above Stonehenge using an 85mm lens, and the resulting detail you get in the Milky Way and the foreground is just absolutely incredible. Maybe I should make a video about printing that image. Would you guys be interested to learn about printing astrophotos maybe? I think that would be a good video. Let me know in the comments down below. If you don't have a star tracker and you're a bit unsure about making that investment just yet, you could try a different technique called stacking to help remove the noise from your images. So in stacking, you take multiple exposures of the exact same scene, same composition, and you create an average of them. And because the noise is randomly distributed between each image, when you make an average of all of these images, the noise gets removed and the scene, which was the same in each image, starts to shine through. So all you have to do is compose your image, dial in your settings, so f2, 20 seconds, ISO 3200, and then capture multiple consecutive images. How many images do you capture? Well, I recommend at least 6 and probably no more than 16. But if it's your first time trying stacking, do 25 images. And then you can do stacking with 6 images or 9 images or 16 images, 25. Do some little experiments and find out what is the optimum amount of images for your camera and lens. Because at some point, adding extra images just doesn't help get rid of much more noise. So it's good to find the optimum amount for your camera and lens. Now, the big issue with stacking the images straight out of camera is that the stars are going to move between each image. So rather than doing the stacking yourself, you can use specialist software. So for example, if you're using a Windows computer, you can download Sequitur, And it's a free to use software, and it does the stacking for you. It'll stack the foreground, it'll stack the sky separately and blend them back together. It does all the hard work for you. It's completely free. It's amazing. If you have a Mac computer, then you can try Starry Landscape Stacker, which does come at a small fee. It's about £35 at the time of making this video, but it does the same thing. Stacks the foreground and sky separately, blends them back together for you, and you have an image without much noise. Now, of course, if you have a star tracker, you can combine this tip with the previous tip, and you can stack tracked exposures, and that will get you the best image quality in astrophotography, hands down. Like, seriously, try it, you'll be absolutely amazed. And finally, tip number 7, stop shining your head torches at it, because you're not going to make the Milky Way brighter by shining a torch at it. I mean, look, we've all been there, myself included. I've done it, taken a shot, looking at the Milky Way with a big beam coming out of the head torch, but it just doesn't make sense. You've spent all that time getting away from light pollution to see the Milky Way in its full glory, and then you just shine a big beam of light. And I'm sure there's plenty of people starting out in this genre of photography and might think it looks cool, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, if you're going to use light in the foreground in some way, just think about how it can either add to the image or help to tell a story. So, for example, one of my favorite photographers who uses a light in the foreground is Michael Goff down in Australia. And he uses more of an omnidirectional light source and holds it really high in the image, and created this series where you kind of feel like this guy is, you know, exploring these otherworldly landscapes with his magical light. And he picks landscapes where the light plays with the foreground very well and casts like really cool, interesting shadows and helps to illuminate the interesting things in the foreground. Another photographer I feel who uses light in the foreground really well is Adam Shainblum. So he's got this almost trademark lantern now, which he uses to illuminate the foreground so you can see a bit more detail in the foreground, but also to illuminate himself, usually sitting in the foreground. And his images are otherwise very cool and blue. Some of them are often taken in snow, but having this warm orange light just makes the image just so much more inviting and warm and friendly, and you kind of just makes you want to be that person sitting in the foreground in this warm light and enjoying the peaceful, serene sort of starlit landscapes that he captures. So the color of the light can also add to the story, can add something to the image. So think about that as well. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video, guys. I hope you picked up some tips. If you have any tips of your own, please get in the comments down below and start the conversation with this amazing community that has decided to follow me and this channel. If you haven't already, check out my video about Milky Way season. Maybe check out my video about photographing the Milky Way above Stonehenge. If you haven't hit subscribe already, come and join the community. What are you waiting for? And if you're going out to enjoy the night sky anytime soon, I wish you good luck and clear skies.